Thank you, everyone. So thank you to PODIM for inviting me. I'm supposed to cover scaling startup culture. So let me tell you a bit about myself first. My journey so far, I've been involved in the world of tech startups for the past 20 years, almost exclusively as an entrepreneur. I've been fighting in the trenches. 4 startups. First one was GFX, back in the world of Web 1, a B2B marketplace for air freight. So that was in the days where you had to build a lot of technology yourself. So we worked with the airlines and the freight forwarders and built a big system. And we had to sell internationally. We had presence in every sort of major hub in Asia, North America, and Europe. My second startup was a graduate recruitment portal, helping graduates get their first jobs out of university. And then more recently, I was involved with One Fine Stay, co-founder of One Fine Stay, where I helped build the operating model of the business. We ran that from 2010 to middle of last year when we exited to our core hotels. It was a sale to our core hotels at the time. And more recently, I've been involved with Klevio. It's an IoT business, helping you open doors with your smartphone. And the idea that came from One Fine Stay, where we had an operational problem to solve, where we had lots of different people needing to access homes, the cleaning crews, the guests, the meet and greeters, and we built a technology solution to allow people to open doors without having to manage keys. It was solving the key management problem. So I acquired the IP as part of the sale to our core hotels, and then I teamed up with Aleš Petic, a Slovenian entrepreneur. So our team of Klevio is based in Ljubljana. Our lab is based in Ljubljana. All the development happens there. And we have a small commercial team in London. So I have quite a bit of experience. And I want to talk to you about sort of how do you scale culture. We've heard a lot of things about culture today. I think Chuck mentioned lots of interesting stuff about culture in the morning. And I want to talk to you about sort of the whole sort of journey of what happens practically when you grow a company from nothing to a reasonable size, and how does culture play into that? So first of all, why it matters. First of all, as we all know, startups are in the business of manufacturing the future. And all of you in this room are involved as part of that ecosystem, either as entrepreneurs or supporters or financiers or even corporates. And because of that belief that you are building something, a piece of the future today, culture, for me, is the X factor that makes startups different to other organizational units. Startups are, as a result, very, very different to corporates, very, very different to other types of organizations. And I call it, it's the X factor. Culture is the X factor of startups. It's an accelerant. When it's great, it can transform your startup, can transform the business, propel to the future. When it's done not very well, it can kill you. So it's a high beta kind of concept. And as a result, it matters. Now, give you a quick example from One Fine Stay. We launched the business, and one of the interesting things is that when you scale a company, it's not just sometimes in terms of revenues or how many signups you have, how many downloads. Many software-only companies look at metrics that can be distilled into a computer or a server. When you're building an operation with service, one of the most difficult things is scaling people, scaling the size of the company. So we grew in terms of revenues, literally 500% in year 1, 300% in year 2, 100% in year 3. And as a result, we had to hire lots of people. We went from a team of 15, 25 in the first year to a team of about 150 at the end of the second year. By 2016, we were 300 full-time people in the business and in excess of 600 people overall, including contractors and freelancers. So it went from nothing, a couple of founders in a room, within 3 years to like almost 600 people. So what happens in that stage? How do you do that? How do you create connectedness, connective tissue in the company when you are scaling it so fast? Let me tell you a story. One Fine Stay, what is One Fine Stay? What we set out to do here is to build handmade hospitality. get the best homes, and give the best service. To do that, we had to do two things. The proposition on the owner side is to offer homeowners the ability to make some income, but with no hassle. So if somebody did all the work for me, I'd put my home up on the network. On the demand side, on the guest side, we want to create distinctive hospitality, effectively have a great, authentic experience in a city environment, so get the best world, best of hotels, best service of hotels, and the best bits of that, but in the setting of a home. Now, to do that, to bring those things together, it wasn't enough to scale supply and demand. It was also important to build this whole proprietary services platform. We had to put a lot of technology that helped our own people manage this whole thing. It was a logistics business. You had to move people around. Unlike hotels, we had all our homes were spread around the city. Each home was very different to each other. So we had to move people and assets everywhere, but it had to feel to the end guest and to the host that it was handmade, cared for hospitality. So for us, building a great service wasn't necessarily an optional extra, it was part of our strategy. And culture was the main determinant, the main driver of building great service. I know not a single hospitality company, and I'm sure all of you have experienced great and bad hospitality. Every great hospitality company has worked through its people. The people are the brand, and the people present the service to you. So in our case, it wasn't an option, it was a necessity. We had to build consistently excellent service. Routine service excellence, I call it. So how did it feel for the guests? They would come in, they'd live like a local, in beautiful homes, and get that kind of hotel-style service. But to deliver that, we could have taken a number of paths. One is build a lot of technology. We could have abstracted most of the complicated stuff and just made a technology problem. But guess what? In these contexts, there's so much variation in what you do that it's extremely difficult to build a lot of technology quickly. So even if we wanted to, we could have never done that. So we chose to basically deliver the brand and the way it feels to a guest through our people, and that's why culture mattered for us. We had to build a great, cohesive, consistent culture for our people so that our guests and hosts felt that that's part of the brand. So, but to do that, how did we actually build, how did we scale this culture? First of all, I just present this as a kind of a wall. We built some foundations, some stuff which I consider to be basic. It's the basis, covering the basis in terms of culture. First of all, recruitment, hiring people. For example, we had a toolkit where we had to standardize how we go about hiring people, how it makes our people, our candidates, feel the same. So if we're hiring somebody in New York or hiring somebody in London, the candidate should feel exactly the same. We should be looking at exactly the same criteria. They should come out of the interviews and the discussion with us feeling the same way. And what did that do? It created that consistent branded experience for our candidates, and those people, whether they signed up with us or not, would go away and feel great about One Fine Stay. They'd think very, very well of us. Would be very, very picky. Would hire probably less than 1 in 20 people from qualified candidates to selection. In terms of unqualified, the ratio is probably 1 to 50, if not higher, depending on the role. Second, the onboarding. We had an onboarding process whereby we'd have a staff induction program, we'd have training, and people would go through that process. So why did we do that? Why spend money and kind of effort doing that? Well, guess what? It was the fastest way for us to create consistency of service. Because for us to make our guests feel the same way across all locations, we had to have people who behave broadly in similar ways and react in similar ways in different situations. Third thing is acculturation. We spend a lot of time getting people who join to spend time together. So we created internal networks. Instead of us trying to do like formal learning processes, we got people to learn from each other and copy each other. Then learning and development. We had quarterly OKRs, objectives and key results, which is typically a performance-based framework, but we use that to great effect in terms of trying to get people to rally behind common goals. I think Chuck mentioned in the morning, a business has to have purpose. And I think for us, the OKRs created purpose for the people who are involved with that. The other thing we did is had talent management. We tried to promote that much maligned middle management. How many of you in the morning session here talk about middle managers? No one wants to be middle manager. But the reality is that to become a senior manager, you have to be a middle manager first. So we really doubled down. We really put a lot of focus on the people who day to day are at the coalface and make decisions in front of our customers. Those are the most important people in the business. And also knowledge. One of the most important things that people don't realize about culture is that how do you get knowledge to flow through the company? And knowledge is not just a bunch of data, it's a system for how to do things. How do you learn what is right? That is very, very hard to put on a piece of paper. The way hotels normally solve that is by having standards documents. You literally have a thick paper that has like 150 standards with how to behave and how to do it. Guess what? Who reads that? The answer is not many people read that. It's much more powerful to demonstrate and to see somebody else do it and copy them. So we spend quite a bit of time thinking about how to do that knowledge distribution in the business. So I view all these as being basic building blocks as to how to get culture right. The other thing we did is that we had a culture barometer. We tried to sort of dip into how do our people feel. And we knew, this was, by the way, unashamedly analytical. Numbers, numbers, numbers. We had a lot of numbers in the business. If our people don't feel great, guess what? Our guests will not feel great for sure. So it's the beginning of the end. If your staff in a service business do not feel happy, excited, motivated to come to work with other colleagues, and give the best they can on a day-to-day basis, our guests will suffer. It was a one-to-one relationship. So we spent quite a bit of time. Every quarter or so, we'd do formal surveys, and then we follow up with talking to people, understanding what the issues were, try to address areas that we could, and nip them in the bud. The other thing I was going to mention to you is that how did we put all this culture, which is a bit of an amorphous mass of not very precise, specific things, in a bottle? How could we describe our culture? So I think it's extremely difficult to build a culture, but it's not that difficult to actually, after the fact, explain it to yourself. So what we did is that the building of the culture happened much more osmotically. It happened through demonstration. So the first employees, the first staff, they looked at the founders, looked at us, how we behaved, how we treat our guests, what decisions we made, the posture, where we're happy, where we're smiling, small things, body language, and they copy you. But over time, you hire some type of person, they copy you, they do the same thing, they hire the people, a DNA gets developed over time. And guess what? We tried to reflect what our own staff told us. We asked our own people, what do you think the culture is? And we tried to distill that into what we call the Magic Six. It's effectively culture shaping. So to give you an example, fire in the belly. Drive was one of the most predominant kind of characteristics of our people. They were driven to succeed, to go the extra mile. They were driven people. They were not happy to just sit back. They were lean in. They were not lean back people. The second part was smart works. People had practical problem-solving intelligence. They're not necessarily the most intellectually brainy sort of people. This is not an algorithmic company. It's a service company. So you wanted people who can solve problems practically and effectively and mix people issues with kind of intellectual issues. Empathy was a big word for us, empathy. If you don't understand how your guests are feeling in a service business, you can never provide service. That was a very, very big word for us. And we looked for empathy when we hired people. It was a very, very strong driver of decisions there. Integrity, doing the right thing. And on many occasions, doing the right thing is not clear in hospitality. Teamwork, all for all, and also we call Remember Alice. This is Alice in Wonderland. The idea was that we celebrated differences. All our people are very different to each other. Those are the quirks who made us who we were. So we spent a lot of time trying to understand all these kind of factors of what made up our culture, but we tried to describe our culture on a piece of paper, and that was it. That was the Magic Six. Now, a quick note. Many people ask me, what roles are hard to hire? I buy that hiring is one of the hardest things you do when you shape culture, because the people you hire are the people who will shape your culture when you're not there. Therefore, recruitment is one of the most important decisions you can make, and one of the key processes that every founder, in my view, has to spend at least a third of their time doing. I must have spent between a quarter and half my time over a 3 to 4 year period just focusing on people. Recruitment, acculturation, talking to them, understanding, listening to them. It's not something you can be skipped. It's not something you can outsource. It's not something that can go away. You have to be there all the time, and founders have to be very much involved from day one up to year 3 or 4, pretty much in every single recruitment decision. But let me give you a couple of headlines here. Some roles are very hard to hire, and why? Influencing roles, I call them spaghetti roles. Product manager. How many of you, every company now has a product manager, but product means a different thing in every single company. These are roles where the person doesn't have a reporting relationship to the people underneath them. People like the engineers, the people who develop the code. They are influencing role. They have to basically use their personality to convince people. It's not enough to tell them what to do. You have to engage with them. So very, very hard to hire those types of roles. Chief marketing officers, senior marketing roles, people who use both left brain, intuitive thinking, brand thinking, so right brain, with left brain, which is much more analytical, numbers-driven. Acquisition marketing and brand, they're kind of so far removed, very hard to find in single roles. Multi-lens roles, people have to think commercially, but also in terms of service. Think of kind of the hotel manager. The hotel manager has to sort of give you hospitality, but they also have to make sure that the hotel works from a P&L point of view. Rapid scaling roles, when you scale very rapidly, a lot of things change. You go from being a generalist to being a specialist, and you might not have the skills. And CIO roles are typical. When you have like 3 guys in the room, you don't need a CIO. When you have got 600 people in 10 locations, you need a CIO. Also, between milestones, when you're fundraising, your CFO or head of finance is a very different type of person, pre-Series B and post-Series B. When you get serious money into the business, you need a step change in how you basically manage that. It's a completely different ballgame, and most people don't have the skills. Again, very, very hard to scale. And I can go on and on and on and on. What's the gist of this? When you're trying to shape culture, many of these hiring decisions do not have right and wrong answers. They mostly have wrong answers. So the key thing is to actually approach these things as being problems to solve, challenges to solve, like you solve other challenges, like you solve product challenges, go-to-market challenges, acquisition, revenue. Everything in a startup is a challenge. And I would say that building culture is a corner piece challenge. And hiring is the most important thing in that corner piece. Now, quick top tips for hiring. Spending time. There is no subsidy. If you don't lean into hiring, it's not going to happen automatically. It's not going to go away. You cannot give it to other people. As a founder, be involved, be on top of it, spend budget 30% to 50% of your time, especially the first few roles. The first person who joins a team of 2, or founding team of 2, is a third of the company. If you're a corporation with 3,000 people and you hire one person, that's 1/3,000th of the company. It's not going to make a difference, a big difference. In a startup, it can drive you to success or it can kill you just with one decision. You have to know what you're looking for. You can't just hire people you like. Everyone knows this stuff, but it's very hard to follow on. You tend to have affinity, especially people who are not experienced, who've never hired people, who've never managed people, people who come from technology, from functional backgrounds, have never done this before. It's very, very hard to go against your instincts and look at facts. Very, very hard, but essential. I generally value qualities over experience for early stage. Again, this is counterintuitive. Most people tell you the opposite. They say, value experience, you've done it before, hire the person who knows it best. I disagree. Very early, if you go from 0 to something, it's much more important, in my view, to hire for qualities, because many of the problems you encounter have not been solved previously. And people who think it's a copy and paste, guess what? They'll make a mistake. Hiring for near-term need. Don't think 5 years on. Think on the next kind of milestone. And the people in your team now are the people who are going to help you for the next milestone, even if it means they won't scale with you. Having a learning process means that you have to sort of do postmortems. If something hasn't gone well with a hire, you've got to come back and understand why, where things went wrong. Also socialize it. In our case, for example, it wasn't just the founder or Demetrios makes a decision. It was a social process. Everybody's getting involved, especially people who have just come into the business. Everybody was involved with hiring. Very, very important. Many a time, I heard yellow and red flags from staff that I did not pick up in an interview. And in the end, we basically trust our own people and said no. And I know a couple of occasions where it was a near miss, where we would have made a massive mistake how to not listen to our staff. If in doubt, don't hire. I know, very painful, speed is of the essence and all that, but a wrong decision can definitely kill you. And also, as a founder, expect to play any single role. I was the scooter driver, cleaner. I cleaned myself and timed myself, reservator, did every single job in the company in a service business, and I'm sure many of you have been there. This, by the way, is the most powerful thing to create culture. Demonstratively leaning in and doing everything you can. People look at that and copy you, and they're inspired by that. That's something that people really love. Okay, change page. Current business, not the hospitality business, so a very, very different beast. It's an IoT. We have, at the beginning of the journey, unlike One Fine Stay, where we scaled it out, we went from 0 to 600 people in 3 years, 4 years. We built a distinctive culture that was, specially crafted for it. With Klevio, we are trying to connect people who want access with people who need access. Homeowners, perhaps, who have a door, with people who are going to come in, either their own family or a third-party sort of delivery person, opening doors with your smartphone. Very different culture challenges. We have a team in Slovenia, Ljubljana, who is our labs, hardware, software, firmware development. It's a team that worked together in 3 previous startups, solid, worked together for a long time together. And then we have a new set of people in London, where the commercial team is, marketing team is. So the challenge we're faced with is we have the brain in Ljubljana, and we have the muscle in London. What we're trying to build here is we want to make sure we have a heart of the business everywhere. So that's a challenge. Very different challenge from One Fine Stay, and we're at the beginning of the journey. So maybe I can report back next time. But just to give you a sense that every company has its own culture challenges, and they're unique to each company. So I'll finish this off with a couple of sort of closing thoughts here, and give you a chance to ask questions. First of all, I would say that take what I say with a pinch of salt. A lot of the stuff, even though I say so myself, is experiential and context-specific. It's very hard to draw conclusions for every single company based on statistically significant results. This is experiential, and I wanted to make sure that this came across to you as being my personal experience. I don't like to give advice to people, especially on matters like that. This is my personal experience. I'm sure you're going to have your own journey. The second thing is that it's important to keep learning. Many people think that they've heard something or they've done something before, and therefore that's the way it should be done. But if you're not listening, if you're not sort of learning every time, learning from your mistakes or assuming that something you've done is not changeable, then next cycle you won't learn. You have to have this kind of double learning loops embedded in the way you think about culture. And my final parting thought, I would say that treat culture also as a unit of innovation. The people who have forged the way and created very distinctive cultures in their businesses. People, for example, like Netflix, you've heard about Netflix, or Zappos, or even Patagonia. There's many companies that have built great, very distinctive cultures. At the time, were breaking every rule in terms of conventional wisdom. So culture is also there to be disrupted. And when you're thinking about your business, think about what you want. How do you want to build a distinctive culture? It's also prone for innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have time for one last short question here. And the question I'd like to choose is the top one. Should startups use headhunting services in the early stages? And how about later on? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I have a strong opinion on that. I think that it depends for what. if you're using any kind of headhunter as lead gen to serve you up people that you meet and interview and have chats with and go through a process, it's perfectly fine to do it whenever, especially for senior roles early on. Why? Because they might have their net cast much wider than your network. If your network is limited, say, for example, you're not a technologist and you're looking for a CTO, by all means do that. But I would keep control of all the process, including the selling. Literally, the only thing they do is serve you up a contact, and you do the first sale. Pitching to somebody else early stage cannot be done better than the entrepreneur. And no recruiter, I've seen even the best headhunters cannot sell your business. And at that stage, you are selling. When you're a team of 2 or 3, you are selling. You are selling yourselves. You're telling somebody, come and work with me. They come and work with people. So if you outsource and make it go away, ain't gonna work, right?
Thank you very much for sharing that insight, Demetrios. Thank you very much. Thank you.